Start with the fungi kingdom. What comes to mind when you hear fungi? Is it delicious mushrooms, the yeast used to make bread, or the mold that grows on old bread? Imagine that fungi are the biological world's decomposition masters. They have their own unique laws of survival and structure. It is essential to understand. Fungi are not plants. Here's why. Like plants, fungi have a cell wall for support. But while plant cell walls are made of cellulose, fungal cell walls are made of a different, tough material called chitin. No photosynthesis. Fungi do not have chloroplasts, which means they cannot perform photosynthesis or make their own food. This is a huge difference from plants. Although they appear simple, fungi are eukaryotic organisms, possessing a complete nucleus and organelles like mitochondria. Fungi exist in both unicellular and multicellular forms. Unicellular, for example, yeast, the smallest lone ranger in the fungi kingdom. Multicellular, for example, mushrooms and molds. A typical mushroom's body has an underground network of threads called hyphae, which form the massive mycelium. The part you see above ground is the fruiting body. This body releases tiny structures called spores to reproduce. This is a form of asexual reproduction, meaning they don't need a partner to make offspring. Because they can't make their own food, fungi are called heterotrophs. They get their energy in two main ways. Saprophytic nutrition. This is when they feed on dead or decaying organic material, like a rotting log. They are the great decomposers of nature. Parasitic nutrition. This is when they live and feed on a live organism, which can cause diseases in plants or animals. Next, we visit a very special kingdom, the Protoctista kingdom. The organisms here are like the hybrids of the biological world. They look like plants, animals, or even fungi, but they are none of them. Most protists are eukaryotes, meaning their cells have a nucleus, and most are unicellular, made up of just one single cell. Protists are often separated into plant-like and animal-like types. Plant-like protists, like algae. They have chloroplasts and can photosynthesize, but they aren't true plants because they lack true organs like stems or roots. Animal-like protists, like amoeba and paramecium. These are defined by how they move and eat. These single-celled organisms have locomotion organ to get around. Amoeba uses temporary extensions of its body called pseudopods, which means false feet, to crawl and to surround food. Paramecium is covered in short, hair-like structures called cilia that beat to swim. Euglena uses a long, whip-like tail called a flagellum to propel itself.
Finally, to survive in water, many protists have a structure called a contractile vacuole. This little bubble pumps out extra water that leaks into the cell, preventing it from swelling up and bursting. This is how they maintain osmoregulation or water balance.
The animal kingdom is the one we all belong to. Animals are all multicellular organisms whose cells do not have cell walls. We classify them into two main groups based on one key feature, the backbone. Vertebrates are animals that have a backbone or spinal column. Invertebrates are animals without a backbone. Mammals such as humans, dogs. They are warm-blooded, endothermic. They have hair or fur. They give live birth, feed their young with milk, and have a special structure during development called a placenta. They have visible external ear pinnae. Birds. They are warm-blooded. They have feathers and wings. They lay hard-shelled eggs. They have a beak and their legs are covered in scales. Reptiles, for instance, snakes, crocodiles. Their skin is dry and covered in scales. They lay leathery or rubbery eggs. Fish, which include salmon, sharks. They have moist scales. They use gills to breathe underwater. They lay shell-less eggs in the water. Amphibians like frogs, newts. They have smooth, moist skin. They lay eggs without a shell in water. Their young live in water, like tadpoles with gills, and the adults live on land, breathing with lungs. Invertebrates are animals without a backbone. The largest group of invertebrates are the arthropods. All arthropods share two main characteristics, a segmented body and jointed appendages, like legs and antennae. We divide arthropods into four main groups: insect, crustaceans, arachnids, myriapods. Insects, such as ants, butterflies. The body is divided into three parts: head, thorax, and abdomen. They have 3 pairs of jointed legs, 6 total. Insects usually 2 pairs of wings and antennae. Arachnids such as spiders, scorpions. The body is divided into two parts, cephalothorax and abdomen. They have 4 pairs of jointed legs, 8 total. They have no antennae. Myriapods like centipedes, millipedes. They have many body segments and many pairs of legs. They have 1 pair of antennae. Crustaceans, for examples crabs, shrimp. They have hard exoskeleton made of calcium carbonate, and 5 pairs of legs. They use gills to breathe. They have 2 pairs of antennae. They often have 1 pair of large pincers or claws for fighting and grasping food, and some carry eye on a stalk.
Next, we talk about plant kingdom. Plants can be broadly divided into 2 major groups, flowering plants and non-flowering plants. Flowering plants. These are the ones that produce flowers, and consequently, seeds and fruits. They rely on sexual reproduction. Non-flowering plants. These plants lack flowers, seeds, or fruits. A familiar example is the fern. They reproduce through spores. Remember, regardless of how they reproduce, all plants are organisms that contain the pigment chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is essential because it absorbs light energy needed to perform photosynthesis, allowing them to make their own food. Let us talk about fern, which is a type of non-flowering plants. The leaves of a fern are specifically called fronds. Instead of seeds, ferns reproduce using tiny structures called spores, which are typically found clustered on the underside of the fronds, instead of flowers or seed. Since spores are very light, they are easily carried by the wind, allowing the plant to disperse and grow in new areas. Flowering plants are further separated into 2 important classes, monocotyledons, or monocots, and dicotyledons, or dicots. We distinguish them using 4 key structural features. 1. Cotyledons, seed leaves. The first difference is right in the name. Monocots have only 1 cotyledon, or seed leaf, inside the seed. Dicots have 2 cotyledons. 2. Flower petals. Next, look at the flowers. Monocots tend to have their flower parts, especially the petals, in multiples of 3. That's 3, 6, or 9 petals. Dicots, on the other hand, typically have their petals in multiples of 4 or 5. 3. Leaf veins. Observe the leaves. Monocots, like grasses, have long, narrow leaves where the main veins are parallel to each other. Think of train tracks running alongside each other. Dicots have leaves where the veins form a dense, reticulated pattern. This means the veins branch out like a net or a web across the leaf surface. 4. Vascular bundles. Finally, look inside the stem at the vascular bundles. These are the tissues that transport water and nutrients. In a dicot stem, these bundles are arranged neatly in a ring. In a monocot stem, the vascular bundles are scattered throughout the stem with no regular pattern. Viruses occupy a strange place in biology. Here's the big question: are viruses a living organisms? The answer is actually no. Viruses are not considered living things. They can't eat, breathe, grow, or even reproduce on their own. Because they cannot independently perform the 7 life processes, such as respiration or reproduction. Viruses are obligate intracellular parasites because they must infect a living host cell to replicate and survive. Example of virus included coronavirus, influenza virus, HIV, which are pathogens that cause disease by infecting host cells. Viruses have a simple structure. Every virus contains the following key components. 1. Genetic material. This is the hereditary blueprint of the virus. Viruses are classified into 2 main types based on their genetic material: DNA viruses, double-stranded, and RNA viruses, single-stranded. 2. Capsid. This is a hard protein coat that surrounds and protects the genetic material. 3. Surface proteins. These structures, often on the surface of the capsid or an outer membrane called the envelope, are crucial for infection. They act like a key, allowing the virus to bind to specific receptor proteins on the surface of a host cell. 4. Virus envelope is made of a lipid bilayer derived from host cell membranes, studded with viral proteins and glycoproteins. It consists of a combination of lipids from the host cell and proteins coated by the virus itself. This outer layer helps the virus infect host cells by binding to receptors. Viruses have a simple structure. Viruses occupy a strange place in biology. Here's the big question. Are viruses a living organisms? The answer is viruses have a simple structure. Every virus contains the following key components. 1. Genetic material. This is the hereditary blueprint of the virus. Viruses are classified into two main types based on their genetic material: DNA viruses, double-stranded, and RNA viruses, single-stranded. 2. Capsid. This is a hard protein coat that surrounds and protects the genetic material. 3. Surface proteins. These structures, often on the surface of the capsid or an outer membrane called the envelope, are crucial for infection. They act like a key, allowing the virus to bind to specific receptor proteins on the surface of a host cell. 4. Virus envelope is made of a lipid bilayer derived from host cell membranes, studded with viral proteins and glycoproteins. It consists of a combination of lipids from the host cell and proteins coated by the virus itself. This outer layer helps the virus infect host cells by binding to receptors. As you can see in this picture, viruses have different structures and shapes.